Nations League champs, Nations League champs, Nations League champs, baby.
Yes, sir. You can say that again.
Nations League champs, baby. Let's go.
Go,
what a
baby.
Game. What a performance. I probably just busted these mics, but this is going to be one of the most fun episodes we've ever had. I mean, that was a game for the ages. I mean, for all those people that were watching that joke of a Logan Paul, Floyd Mayweather fight, I am sorry, because you missed an absolute dynamite of a game. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. It had drama. It had beers and stuff being thrown at players. It had players shushing the crowd. One very Captain America, Christian Pulisic doing that, in fact. And I mean, it's a game that's going to go down in the history. The image of Christian shushing the crowd with all the players cheering behind him, that's going to be one of those iconic moments, one of those most iconic pictures in the history of U.S. soccer. I mean, like I said, this is arguably the best Mexico-U.S. game from a pure just watching standpoint, from a neutral standpoint. You could say it's one of the best, if not the best, U.S.-Mexico game of all time.
No, yeah, this was really a blockbuster game of football, but in all regards. I was at work that day, so I couldn't catch the whole second half. But I texted Chaz on the way home. I had to pull over on the side of the freeway to catch a glimpse of overtime because of I was listening on the road and it just sounded too juicy. So, it's obviously been a couple of days since the final, but have we really gotten over it, man? Like every time I see something out of this game, the photos, the quotes from the guys, it's just, man, we really did that. That was such a blockbuster, such a high energy game, such a great performance from so many players that it really is, I think, one of the standout performances, not just against Mexico, but, in United States men's national team history.
Without a doubt. And was it the best performance ever? Absolutely not. There were mistakes all over the field. Could we have played a lot better? 100%. But there's one thing that I saw this team. I saw a lot of guts and I saw fight to battle back, not once, but twice, to come back and win that game. Ethan Horvath off the bench to have the game of his life and the save of his life. Are you kidding me? Like, it had everything. And I think that's the thing that showed out the most, or that showed me the most, is that they want to fight for the manager and they want to fight for the flag and the stars, and like you're wearing the jersey right now. They want to fight for that badge. They want to fight for the stars and stripes. These players showed so much passion and a will to win, and that's why we won that game. We didn't win that game on tactics. Greg Berhalter didn't win that game. I think we're going to talk about it later, but he almost lost that game, honestly. Individual mistakes. Mark McKenzie, to have an absolutely brutal error in the first minute of the game to allow Mexico to go up 1-0 before, they'd even said the starting lineups in the broadcast, and then to battle back and be an absolute stalwart the rest of the game almost.
I was just going to say, it's almost like the game was so satisfying because of the ups and downs of it. We started off so rough, we came back. We battled back, and then we went back behind. We battled back once again, and it almost seems like if we thrashed Mexico, 4-5-0, I don't even know if it would have been this satisfying, because this result that the boys pulled out, it really had everything. You saw the character, you saw the togetherness, keeping everybody, in the game, everybody, responsible for their role. It just felt so good to see these guys hold each other accountable and get a result through grinding, just pure grinding and heart and character from just every single one of those. So it's almost better than, keeping a clean sheet or keeping, walking them out of the park, just a blowout game, because this game really just put everyone to the test and they passed it with flying colors.
I mean, you saw just how much it meant to these players in the celebrations for Pulisic's goal and the celebrations afterwards and everything. The tears from Horvath. I mean, just all the different emotions. You could see just how intense of a game and how badly that they wanted to win. And I mean, it worked out. And like you said, I think this is the beginning of something great. And I think a lot of U.S. soccer fans see that. I think a lot of Mexican soccer fans and other fans around the world are starting to see just what we have building here.
Yeah, it's definitely something, that a lot of the guys, the pundits were talking about during the game. Clint Dempsey and all those guys having fun on
the shades,
the shades,
baby.
Maybe it was just me being worried before the game, but Clint Dempsey was just rubbing me the wrong way. And as soon as he put those shades on at the end of the game, and I was like,
It's
hell yeah,
over. We won.
baby.
We won. We won.
That's
If
it,
Clint
man.
Dempsey puts on shades every time before a match, we'll never lose.
Yeah, just I just wasn't sure where to go at the start, what to think at the start of the game. You know, an experienced Mexico versus us, especially with the lineup. You know, we'll talk about later the lineup that we put out. It was just, it was a nervy, build up to the game, but even a nervy first half, even. But just the way that coming out of that, I think we proved to a lot of people that regardless of what the manager may be doing, this performance was a lot on the players, and the players are what's going to go the distance in this United States men's national team, and that's what's rubbing Mexico fans the wrong way, and that's what's making echoes across over to Europe, that these players are putting out this kind of performance regardless of the tactics. McKennie winning almost every aerial ball, man. That's like Horvath coming off the bench. That's European clubs are looking at that kind of play, and they're seeing these American guys are doing it on the big stage. Apart from the manager, apart from anything else they've done in their careers, they're putting out these big performances, and it's time to listen.
Yeah, and this was the youngest team that the U.S. we've ever fielded in a final. 24 years old. That Mexican team average age was 28, so a 4-year difference. It seems like this Mexican generation, where they've dominated recently. We can't deny that. Obviously, we don't like it. We hate that happened. However, right now, I think we could see the possibility of a flipping of the page and a turning of the tides in terms of who's going to be that top dog in CONCACAF. Because, the young players are there. And in this game, we just saw this team grow up in front of us. We saw them make mistakes, and we saw them battle back from those mistakes and come out victorious.
Yeah, one of the most noteworthy performances from the game was Mark McKenzie, and you wouldn't expect that considering his early mistake in the second minute, but after the game he commented on all it took was just him to cool off for a second, say a quick prayer, and then look at the rest of the 90 minutes forward, and he got right back in it, and he had one of the best games of his United States men's national team career after that moment. And that's exactly what you're talking about, growing up right in front of us. He saw, he knew he made a mistake, and he knew that he could either choose to let that destroy him, let Mexico take advantage of that, get in his head over it, or he can move on, grow up, be mature about it, and take it to him. And that's obviously there's been a ton of standout players from the match, but that really stood out to me as a strong-minded, strong-willed individual, and that's a proper center back right there.
Yeah, and another guy that we could talk about grew up in front of our eyes is our European champion, Christian Pulisic. It wasn't the best game from him. He wasn't as involved, especially early on in the game. In the second half, he grew a lot more into the game. I think moving him centrally was probably a good decision. But the way he took that penalty and the way he celebrated after, I think it showed, and I think it's clear that he's ready to be the leader of this team. Whether he's the rah-rah guy or more of a lead by example type, which is probably the more likely of the two, he showed us something. He showed us that he's the guy. He's Captain America. He's ready to roll. To have the armband on, to take the shirt off, to shush the crowd. That was a big-time statement from Christian Pulisic. And how do you not love the post-game interview after? He's talking about the penalty. He's like, yeah, I just wanted to go out swing and stuff. I was like, I'm just going to put that top bins, and that's exactly what I did. The coolness, the swagger, it's huge. And I think it's going to rub off on the other players in a great way. You saw him laughing and joking on the bench in the Costa Rica game. This team is headed in the right direction, and it's following that man right there.
Yeah, and it's really good to see him leading by example through his actions. But this game also, like you mentioned, it wasn't his best performance. So he really took to the role of captain, and made the most out of it. Just because he wasn't having the best game himself, he found other ways to lead the players and gear him on. You see him talking to Ethan Horvath before the penalty. You see just his outreach to all the other players during the game, and keeping their heads level and keeping their heads ready for what's to come, and always being there for his fellow teammates. He's still a young guy, but he's just vocalizing that role just as much as he is, playing it. So which I think is really good because some captains, you look at Lionel Messi, and he's just the guy on the field that's gonna give 100% and hope that the other players follow that example. Or you look at other captains, you look at Virgil van Dijk or Sergio Ramos. Those are guys that are going to vocalize on the field, get their teams rowdy, and
I mean, I love me some Virgil van Dijk. He's a great leader, but I mean, the real captain of that team is Jordan Henderson. We all know it. It's 10 years of red. Upendo, but
Oh
this is
my
not about
gosh.
Liverpool. This is about another great leader in Christian Pulisic. We're talking about the U.S. men's national team here, who just won a trophy, and Pulisic is. I think he's ready to take that next step forward, and he's going to be the guy. I wouldn't be shocked if we see Greg Berhalter make a permanent captain now. We've talked about Weston McKennie possibly being the leader of this team, and we saw a lot of leadership from Weston McKennie in that game as well. He was one of the standout performances, driving, gets the goal. He's on set pieces, always dangerous. He's not the biggest player, and yet he seemed like he was winning every header in the air, sliding into challenges, being physical. Also, whenever there was a little bit of a shoving and anything going on, or if there was a little bit of a yelling match, things being thrown on the field, the guy that stepped right in front and get right in the opponent's face when someone would knock someone down was Weston McKennie. He was right in the referee's ear. He's that rah guy. And then you have Christian, who seems to be the more lead by example type. And I think the two of them play off each other very well.
Yeah, I really like this game from Weston McKennie. I think it was also probably one of his better games for the national team as well, because he just seemed to cover every blade of grass. He was everywhere, winning every challenge, winning every header, off of corners. I think he won basically every corner that we whipped in, even set piece, into the area. He was on the end of every ball. But not just that, like you mentioned, it's the fact that he knows how to control his behavior, but in still an impactful way. He's not going to be that guy who's going to do something, knock on wood, he's not going to do something stupid and get sent off with the red card because he's just loses his head. He always seems to have his head on his shoulders, and when the way he acts is just to express himself and to do justice to his team, to his teammates, and make himself known. And every time something happened, it's a CONCACAF game, there was a lot of scruffy stuff going on, and he backed up his teammates. He made himself known to the referee. He made himself known to the Mexico players. But never once did you think that he was going to cross that line. He's a very cool, level-headed guy, and I love to see that from him. Especially if we're playing these CONCACAF games, we need a guy like that to butt heads stand out. But still,
if you're gonna get in his face or get in one of the another player's face, he's gonna be that first one right back in there to get in their face. He's gonna step up and match whatever intensity and go above and beyond and will his team to the win. A guy that we haven't even mentioned yet was Giovanni Reyna. 18 years old, scoring that goal. I thought he was absolutely superb again. I think you could make the argument he was one of our best players, if not our best player, throughout the entire semifinal and the final match itself. Excuse me.
Yeah, and just that professionalism, that character of Giovanni Reyna to play in big games and to get the job done. If you when we go down 2-0, I mean, if we potentially went down 2-0 from that VAR call, that could have been the end of the game right there. But to have Gio Reyna step up and call goes our way and step up and then he ties the game, that is huge. That I mean, apart from Horvath's saves, that could have been one of the moments of the match right there, because that's really what told these players that we're still in it. This isn't a landslide game anymore. They almost got a second, but they're not going to go on to get that second. I mean, and run away with the game. We're gonna keep this level, and that's up to Gio Reyna to keep his head in the game and get that equalizing goal, because that really was props to McKennie as well for doing that later on. But that's really important stuff from the young guy.
That's a good point, because Mexico had the upper hand in the first half, but to get that goal before halftime, to go in 1-1, your level coming out of the half, gave this team a lot of confidence. And I think it's pretty clear that later in the second half and in extra time, we were the better team, and we were the one on the front foot, creating chances and pushing forward, driving forward with the ball, causing problems for that Mexico defense. And a big part of that was Gio Reyna.
Yeah, and Gio Reyna, he's always going to bring that liveliness up to the front, and when we need that sort of thing, it's especially against a team like Mexico, because when we how we lined up was not the most attacking minded way. So it really came down to Gio Reyna to kind of provide that. I mean, obviously, Pulisic and Sargent as well, but it really came down to the three of them putting in a lot of work going forward, and to give us that spark, to give us that inspiration that when we go down, we're not out of this game yet. That could have been detrimental to be on the field and see, oh man, we could easily be down 2-0 right now. Luckily, VAR saved us, but it was huge for those three guys up front to keep whatever spark alive in that clearly defensive minded team. So props to the front three, and especially props to Gio for keeping that intensity up for the whole game.
And then Ethan Horvath, I mean, take a bow, man. Coming off the bench when Zach Steffen gets hurt, Ethan Horvath hasn't played a lot of football, obviously being Sam Mignolet's deputy over with Club Bruges, and comes in and they score an early goal on him. And to make the save, not just on the penalty, but the long shot from Irving Lozano. And I mean, in that penalty, to just in that moment, that's the moment of his career. And obviously you hope he can get better and have more moments like that, not just for the national team, but also with his club. But I mean, that must just give him so much confidence going forward.
Yeah, and look, it's normal goalkeepers don't even expect to come off the bench in a regular game, just a regular league game or a group stage game. But he had to come off the bench in a final against our biggest rival, and that's not easy at all. That's got to take all the strength and courage in the world. Yeah,
gets kicked in the chest upon coming in, and he just stands on his line and was an absolute wall. So, like I said, take a bow, Ethan Horvath, in your hometown. You just can't write this stuff. This is what football's all about. It's what sports are all about.
Yeah, and just even those other saves. He stopped a couple one-on-ones, and that one from Lozano, and it's just all around just phenomenal stuff. And he really put the name Ethan Horvath into USMNT history. Everybody's going to know that name now for the guy that potentially won us this game. I mean, yeah, I guess he did win us this game in a sense. Who knows what would have happened if we'd gone to penalties, if he didn't save that. It was really anyone's game. But I mean, what a statement from the guy. I mean, it's just, especially with his career going how it is over in Europe. But
he's going to have suitors. He's definitely going to have suitors.
Oh yeah,
I wouldn't be shocked if he leaves Club Bruges.
Yeah. I think he's a winner now. He's proven that he could be a big time goalkeeper from this game. That's something that a lot of clubs, bigger clubs in Club Bruges, deserve as their starting keeper. The Club Bruges can find a lot of guys to fill his spot as secondary keeper. Fact of the matter is that Ethan Horvath needs to find something better for himself, because this should shoot his confidence through the roof. Give yourself some self-worth and find yourself a team that's playing you week in and week out, because that's what he deserves. I mean, obviously that can't happen at the national team. There's been a lot of competition with first choice goalkeepers and national team past, but so I wouldn't say it's completely Zach Steffen's role to keep. He could definitely fight for this role at the national team as well, though.
Well, there better be a competition. I mean, after a performance like that, and neither goalkeeper is playing a lot of football, I think we both agree and we both think that Zach Steffen is the better of the two. I think he didn't do any – he was pretty good in this tournament. I think he's been pretty good in the past. He's made his mistakes, but as has Horvath when he's came in. Zach Steffen has the upper hand in terms of his ability to play out from the back with his feet. But when you have a performance like that, in any position around the field, you want the chance to try and keep your place and to earn another spot. Obviously, in the Costa Rica game that happened yesterday, he kept his spot, didn't really have anything to do at all. But, Zach Steffen, hopefully it's only what they say is a bone bruise and it's not a long-term injury and he'll be fine come World Cup qualifying, come Gold Cup, whatever. We're still not exactly sure what that Gold Cup roster is going to look like. But we always talk about in the other positions how competition is a good thing, how it brings the best out in players. And maybe this is something that makes Zach Steffen better. I mean, these guys have known each other since they were 13, 14 years old. We saw them together in the celebrations, celebrating together. We saw, just how close of friends they are. I think this is going to be good for both players. If there is an open competition, they're both trying to battle for that number one.
Yeah, and it's from a fan's perspective, you would hate to see this performance go quiet. It's something that for me at least I want to see continue moving forward. I want to continue seeing Ethan Horvath. I think he deserves it. I wouldn't want this to just be the one cameo that he made himself known and then never butts in again because Zach Steffen comes back from injury. I think this performance deemed himself worthy of being a part of that number one conversation, despite what the stigma may be around Zach Steffen and everything. But I think this definitely puts him in the running for that. And I think it's like you mentioned, it's a great thing because how close they are, how good they both can grow together. One of my favorite things with the match was when Horvath was going in, he mentioned how Zach Steffen, how he spoke to Zach Steffen before going in, and Zach just mentioned that he believes in him and just show everybody what you're made of. And I think that's really great from a goalkeeper's union perspective. Just these guys both believe in each other, are both supportive of each other, and they trust each other too. They trust each other to do the other's job to the best of their ability.
Yeah, moving on to more of outlook on the future. Looking at World Cup qualifying coming up in a couple of months, I think this team has showed, and now they're battle tested. I think they now understand what they're going to be up against in terms of a CONCACAF game, because the reality is in CONCACAF, if you're not always going to have your best game, you're going to have to grind out results. You're going to have to grind out a result against a team that's low blocking you, that's getting chippy, that's getting in your face. And this team now know what it's like to get it done against one of the best teams in CONCACAF in Mexico, and also one of your average, more normalized teams. I guess they were finished third, but Honduras as well.
Yeah, and it's all about that grind that I mentioned earlier, because sometimes you're gonna have to grind out a game and play the CONCACAF way to get a result, and it's not always gonna be an easy 4-0 maybe like it was yesterday against Costa Rica. You're gonna have to grind, and to win the grind, I think you learn a lot because it shows you to what limit you have to push to. If you're grinding out something against Mexico or who knows, even Germany in the future, a team that you might think is better than you, but you're in the game, you gotta know your limits, and you gotta know how hard you gotta push, and I think they learned that this weekend, because they saw what it takes to get a win like that. They know how hard they have to push, how together they have to be, and so that's a lesson that they can take to a lot of games in the future. They have to push. If they want a big result, they're going to have to push for it, and that's definitely a valuable lesson to learn.
Right now, who's on top in terms of CONCACAF? Who is the bigger giant in CONCACAF? Is it the US or Mexico? When you look at everything in terms of players that they have at their availability, the best 11, is the US, or has the US now surpassed Mexico?
It's a tough question, because I'd say with that, obviously from the game we saw on the weekend, we're pretty equal. But I think what gives the United States the edge is that we're going up and they're going down. If not, if we're on an upward slope, they're on a downward slope, and maybe that makes us both kind of level right now. But we're improving, and that's what's making us the top dogs, I think. And I think years come, I mean, even next year, I think we'll be easily the better team. 2 years, easily the better team as well. I mean, we talk about, you want to predict how we'll each individually fare at the World Cup, and I think we'll do much better than them, because we'll keep improving from this point forward. And I feel like the Mexico camp is is kind of panicking, kind of struggling, saying, look, they got a young, you know, youthful core that is growing, developing together, and we're kind of still fielding all these older guys to get the job done. We got a few young players here and there, but we keep having to rely on our older guys to ultimately get the job done. They don't have this youthful core like we do. They're not developing in the way that we are. So come time next year for the World Cup, who's gonna be fare better, and I think it's gonna be us.
I mean, I couldn't agree with you more in terms of the way both teams are trending. But can I say that the U.S. right now is better than Mexico? Definitively? Not exactly, because like we talk about how this team's on the upward trend, but it's still a very young team. We've seen Mexico go into qualifying and qualify for the World Cup. That's still something that this U.S. men's national team has to do. You could say about players that they didn't have the U.S. We didn't have Aaron Long, guys like that. They didn't have Raul Jimenez. So, maybe it wasn't a full strength 11, but in terms of where these teams are headed, I think it's completely different directions. I couldn't agree with you more on that one. Let's go shift more back towards the game itself and towards the conversation around Greg Berhalter, because he made a call and a decision that on our preview show we did not think he would make, and we didn't see him doing. He changed the formation and the team completely, went to a back three or a back five, however you want to look at it, completely changed the system of play. And there's definitely some questions over whether or not that was the right decision.
Yeah, 100%. Neither of us predicted that happening. I mean, he went with a back five, and he threw two players in there that haven't really seen much of the field for the national team. One being Tim Ream, hasn't really seen much of the field at all, even for Fulham. And so I think it was just kind of a ballsy, bold decision. I think he did it out of the inspiration to want to be defensive and be safe. But I think that ultimately was the wrong decision. He fielded more defenders to play it safe. However, I think the fact that that back line was not experienced together, that back line had not really worked together all that much, I think that played against what he was looking for in safety and security. And ultimately we got the win. We won our silverware. But do I think that we fielded our best starting 11? Do I think that was the best strategy to open the game with? No, I think we could have had a much better first half of the game if we started differently, if we stuck with the back line that we were comfortable with. So ultimately, I think because the defense looked so shaky and disjointed in the first half, I think that's down to Greg Berhalter, and I think that that ultimately is a bad stamp on his part, because the game could have looked very differently if he didn't go with such an interesting take on the starting 11.
Yeah, and it seemed so disjointed, and that the players just weren't comfortable playing in that system. You just think back to the first goal that they had. Mark McKenzie obviously was too nonchalant on the ball, gave the ball away. But if you think about it, he might not even be in that position if we're playing a classic back four. He's probably a little bit more narrow. Maybe DeAndre Edlin's not so pushed so far up high. Tim Ream was getting exposed all over the place. Long balls were causing issues all over the place because they isolated him. They isolated Mark McKenzie, and we struggled to take that down. I think DeAndre Edlin actually had a fantastic game. I think, we talked about him. We were surprised that he was included, but I thought he was superb. His experience definitely helped throughout the game. Do I think it was the right decision maybe to play him in that system? No. What I probably preferred to see, if we're going to do that, I would have preferred to have seen just go with the classic back four and maybe play Serginho Dest as a classic left back and DeAndre Edlin as a right back. I think he's definitely forced himself 100% back into the national team spotlight. He's probably now easily one of the top three. We're talking about Serginho Dest, Reggie Cannon. Now DeAndre Edlin has put his name back in that cap.
Yeah, and nothing against DeAndre Yedlin. I definitely trust him in that position. So I'm no problems with him in the back line, because I think he did great. It's just, I think the biggest qualm is with the decision to go with the back five. I mean, that's just what, kind of lost a lot of the players as far as, making things look cohesive. We traditionally use the back four. If he just substituted, just threw in Yedlin at that right back spot in the back four, theoretically we could have fared pretty well. I mean, Mark McKenzie and John Brooks are comfortable with that. So I think that could have worked just fine if we had the midfield support to asset it. I think that would have been end of story, and we probably would have been more comfortable. But it's because he, changed up the system so drastically, and, threw Tim Ream in there. I mean, I know Tim Ream is, a mature and, experienced professional, but I think just the fact that we've been talking about building a cohesive unit out of the back four that is comfortable and, plays for each other, not just themselves, and then throwing a couple random players in there just kind of threw that off. We talk about the back line of, Robinson, Brooks, McKenzie, Dest being, pretty locked on and comfortable. And then, throwing a wrench in that for a final is kind of a ballsy decision on Greg Berhalter, and I don't think it was the correct one.
Yeah, and what were your thoughts on his substitutes? When Serginho Dest first came off, I was a little bit surprised. I wasn't surprised the player that they brought on, Tim Weah. I thought Tim Weah came in and had a pretty good game. He had an impact, he had a positive push on the game, but it just seemed like, oh, we're gonna take off Dest right now. And at first, maybe, oh, they're going to shift Yedlin back. He's going to play as wing back. We went back to that back four, and I think we were a lot better. Leaving Tim Ream on was still – it was surprising to me, just being that they were clearly exposing his lack of pace down that right flank and trying to isolate him and causing us issues that way. Diego Yanez, during his goal, it was him one-on-one with Tim Ream, cut inside, and scored his goal. So – and this isn't to hate on Tim Ream. Tim Ream is a great professional. He's done a lot of good things. I think he's a valuable member of this squad. He was just struggling in that game, and I was a bit confused by that. Everything obviously worked out great. I think the change of tactics when he did take off Serginho Dest was the right decision. I think he recognized his mistake in playing that change of system. We went back to the back four, and with the three midfielders, almost moved Christian Pulisic a little bit more centrally. That got him more involved in the game, and it kind of worked out. But to start off like that, I think it really held this team back early in this match.
Yeah, and going off of that, it seemed like with Berhalter's subs throughout the game, it was almost like a juggling act, because he knew he messed up with that system to start with, and then he was, it seemed like he was just trying to switch things up too much because he was trying to counteract what he did in the first half, and making these interesting substitutions to make up for that is also hard on a team. When you talk about how we had to grind out for this win, and everybody be in the zone, be focused, having your manager sub in different players, keep switching the system, change formation, do this, do that, tell certain guys to go here instead of there. That makes things even harder because you're trying to do your job to the best you can, and then now you got manager trying to switch things up a little bit, and and that was happening a lot in the second half, and even in extra time too. Just so many variations and systems that he was trying to counteract the first half with. That it must have been hard on the players to kind of stay on top of that tactical mess that Berhalter was trying to fix.
I'm just going to agree with what you said there. There was a phone ringing by me, and I kind of got distracted, so I missed part of what you said. But let's just move on to another topic in this whole type of thing. No Yunus Musa in the Nations League semifinal or final. I think that was something that both surprised us. He was a player that we both wanted to see be inputted into that final. Coming off the bench at multiple times, I was thinking, oh, is this where we see Musa? I think I tweeted out at halftime, maybe we bring Musa in and he shores up our midfield and allows us to maybe have a little bit more possession, be a little bit more dangerous on the counterattack. and he didn't make that call. He brought on Sebastian Lletget at one point, his favorite player, who I didn't really think had that much of an impact on the game. And I think we saw just how good of a player he was in the Costa Rica game just yesterday. He comes in and he was arguably, probably, I think undoubtedly our best midfielder in that game, with his ability to just collect the ball and move it on to the next player, to drive past a player, create, try and break that back line and create chances for other players. And that's something I think I would have liked to have seen. I think that could have helped us out.
Yeah, it's I don't know. For me, it's hard to say because I don't know, what Musa's standing in is in this team, or what Greg thinks of him, just because we haven't really seen that much trust put into him yet. So, not seeing him in the semifinal, it's hard for me to say. Does Greg even trust him to get that job done in a final? I do think that he has the skill set to make that midfield tick even better than it did. It's just it's big question marks as to what Greg Berhalter, how Greg views Musa, because we fought so hard to get this guy, pin him down as an American national, and then we're not really using him to his full capacity. He's a great player, and he can benefit us in a lot of ways. So it's just strange not to see him in a game where he could definitely be of use. Strange not to see him play.
Greg said it was a tactical reason he didn't play. He said he trusts him a lot and has a lot of faith in him. So he's definitely a player, without a doubt, that's going to have a big time role to play in qualifying coming up here. But it was just disappointing. And I think, you can say, oh, he's a young player. Maybe he wasn't up to the task. I don't think it was it. I genuinely think Greg just thought tactically there'd be a better option. We can disagree with that, but I don't think it's from a lack of faith, if that makes sense. I think it's hard to say that you have a lack of faith in him when you just watch him play. I mean, it's something we talk about with Gio Reyna, but just the calmness on the ball under pressure is just something you don't see from a lot of young players and a lot of players in general. I mean, you think of Jackson Ewell. When Jackson Ewell's under pressure, sometimes he panics and sprays the ball out of bounds, places a missed pass. You don't see that from Yunus Musa.
And I think what probably ultimately did the decision for Greg that game was he looked at his bench and he knew that this had to be a tactically tight game, and he needed a guy to go in that's going to follow his directions and get the job done. And he looked to Sebastian Lletget because that is his guy. He for some reason trusts Lletget to get that job done, and to follow his directions, follow his tactics, and play accordingly. And so I think if you're in a final and you don't want to take any more big risks, I mean, not to say that Musa is a big risk, but you want something that you could count on. In this sense, for Greg,
The
that is
experience.
Sebastian Lletget. Yeah, of course, has that experience as well. I think it's a tough decision, but if you want to go with the safer bet, for Greg at least, since Sebastian is his favorite, he's more experienced as well, I think that's just probably what it came down to.
Yeah, and when you brought Tyler Adams on, I think you could definitely tell that Tyler Adams makes a difference, and it's disappointing. I think if Tyler Adams is available, there's no way he goes to that back five. The system change is unnecessary. I think it opens up a lot of different things for a lot of players just because of the energy and the ground and the amount of field that he can cover and all the defensive work that Tyler can do.
Yeah, and then if we have a player like Tyler in, that gives the opportunity to play a player like Musa as well, because you have the freedom, you have the stability in defense through Adams to have a player like Musa who's going to drive the ball forward and get into the attacking third and get the ball up. I think that could even have contributed into his decision to play Lletget. Lletget is a guy that won't complain if he's dropped back, into a more of a sixth position to play defense and get his hands dirty. Greg definitely just could have looked at, said, if we had Adams available more so, and we felt comfortable in this defense, maybe then we could throw Musa in there. But to have Adams and just get that more stability through Leggett probably was just the more comfortable choice.
And then thinking, more along the lines to getting our best player involved. Early in this game, Christian Pulisic was not involved enough. He wasn't involved enough in the Honduras game, and I thought that Greg would have made a point to get him more involved, and we didn't really see that until the second half. I mean, he's our best player. I don't know if it's when he started to play more centrally, he got more involved, got on the ball, started creating a lot more chances, starting running at that Mexico back line with the ball, causing them issues. He ended up winning that penalty, and we see him play out wide for Chelsea, and he's so good, but his best performances that we've seen for the national team seem to be when he's playing centrally.
Yeah, and for me, it seems like every time he plays wide, he's trying to do too much on his own, and I don't know. Maybe that's just how I feel when every time he's got the ball and dribbling in on the box, it seems like he almost especially in the last few games when he hasn't been at his best, it seems like he's trying to do everything on his own. But I think when he's in a more centralized position, he is open up to more options, and it helps him be pull the strings better through the middle of the park. Maybe if he may feel isolated on the wing, when he is more centralized, he just happens to get involved with the play way better and be a better part of the team overall. So, it's interesting because, like you mentioned, he does play so well on the wing for Chelsea. But I guess this is maybe it is just a game or a couple games off for him in that position. But or this could just be further evidence that the middle is his place for the national team, at least.
Yeah, and I think you're definitely going to find him drift out into those wide spots and able to take on those fullbacks, cut inside, cut down the byline, whip crosses in. I just think for it just feels like when he's more centrally, he's able to drift in those pockets of space and pick up the ball more often and get on the ball more than he would on the wing. I think when we've seen him playing, when we have that classic midfield three, maybe he's a little bit better. And if we're making a point to feed the ball to him out wide, it works. It's just when we're not able to, when things aren't exactly clicking midfield wise, having him out wide, it just seems like he's not getting involved enough. And when he's your best player by far, and this is no disrespect to anyone else, it's just a testament to how good of a player at this moment and what kind of impact he can have on the game. We saw him have that impact when he moved centrally. And even when he was out wide and he was getting involved more in the game, we looked a lot more attacking. We looked like we were a lot more threatening on that goal. We saw his quality on the set pieces. And that's definitely something Greg has to think about is how do we get the best out of Christian Pulisic? Is that playing him as a second striker maybe? Almost like we saw in qualifying him playing off Josie Altidore. That's definitely an option if Josie's able to come back in the squad, if he's able to stay fit. And it's a good problem to have when you have all these different options of how to play because, this is something we haven't really had an issue with in the past. It's always just been, we stick our best guys in the team, and that's the only really option we have. Right now, we have the ability to be flexible, to say, hey, we're going to start Josh Sargent up top. We're going to start you guys out wide. Gio and Christian, you guys going to be wide. Oh, this time we're going to go 4-2-3-1. We're going to bring in Brendan Aronson, Tim Weah to play alongside Christian Pulisic. And just the one constant that has to be in this team when everyone is fit and firing is Christian Pulisic, I think, at least in terms of attacking players.
And, speaking of, a good problem to have, yesterday in the Costa Rica game, we didn't see Christian Pulisic, but we saw Brendan Aronson in that position, and I think he did great. So what do you think, is Brendan Aronson's role if you say that Christian Pulisic has to remain as a constant? Where do you think Brendan Aronson falls into this equation then?
Yeah, let's not kid around. Brendan Aronson's not dislodging Christian Pulisic anytime soon. He's had a great start to his career over in Europe. I'm excited to see what he does in a full season over there with Salzburg. Maybe he gets himself a move towards Red Bull Leipzig. I think that'd be a really good move for both sides. In that, Jesse Marsch is over there. He brought him to Europe with Salzburg. Now he's over working with Tyler Adams at Leipzig. So that's definitely something to look out for later in the summer. But the thing I think I like most about him is his directness. It's something different to Christian Pulisic. I think that's something that Pulisic can add more to his game, and I think he's more direct when he plays centrally. But from those wide positions, he makes those Aronson makes those darting runs in behind the defensive back line that creates space for other players and creates opportunities for himself. Um, and that is exactly why I think he's such a dynamic player and such a weapon to bring off the bench. And if Christian is unable to go because of injury, or we're playing him centrally, and we want to add Brendan Aronson on the out wide, if Gio Reyna can't go, something like that, he's definitely a player that's going to have a big role to play. Maybe he doesn't get into our best 11, but damn it, he is a good guy to bring off the bench, and he is a dangerous player to bring off the bench.
Yeah, and I think it's just him rising up just kind of so quickly out of nowhere, just like a lot of our players have. It's been great because I think he is a guy that I could trust. Maybe not doing the job to the total same capacity as our best player Christian Pulisic would do, but he is a guy that I could trust on either side of the field to be a good attacking force in the final third. And we saw that against Costa Rica. We didn't really have. I mean, we didn't have Pulisic that game to be our main driving force, and Aronson just balled out. He did great, and it's great that we have an option that we're not taking. I mean, even despite us taking a step down from our best player, Brendan Aronson offers a great skill set that still makes us comfortable when moving forward and attacking. I think his directness, along with Timothy Weah's directness too, is just something that we don't get from Giovanni Reyna and Christian Pulisic. These guys are really direct on the ball and get things break the lines really well. So I really like these two as options to switch things up, especially if coming off the bench to one of these guys. They give us a great option tactically to throw things up, throw things for a curveball, and give us a different kind of energy.
Yeah, you mentioned Timothy Weah, and I thought Tim Weah was absolutely phenomenal in that Costa Rica game. He's unlucky, not to get a goal. We were texting back and forth like, oh, Tim Weah deserves a goal. He's doing so much good work. His link-up play with Yunus Musa was absolutely superb. They are playing off of each other down that right flank so well. And one thing that really stood out to me was Tim Weah's crossing ability. We've seen it with Lille. We've seen it with the national team now. And in that game, it just kind of cemented something, that I've been kind of thinking about, but I haven't really quite said it yet. He's one of our best crossers we have of the ball. His ball delivery is absolutely superb.
Yeah, now that you mentioned that, I mean, we don't really see that many crosses from a lot of the guys. I mean, maybe it's just because with the striker that we're playing in centrally. I mean, it could be just a matter of personnel wanting to play differently. But I mean, Tim Weah really offers a good ball into the middle. If we have a player like DK, like we did yesterday, it's great to have someone who's gonna whip those direct balls centrally. So whereas we see Gio and Pulisic, they like to drift into pockets of space and take on players and oftentimes play a quick, fast ball centrally. Crossing is definitely an important part that we don't want to, leave out of our game. If we want to play in a different way, with a target man striker, Timothy Weah can come in handy there because he definitely shows that directness and that capability to whip in a good cross.
I think he's in a similar spot to Brendan Aronson in terms of where they sit in the squad. They probably don't get into our best 11. However, they're a very big asset coming off the bench. If one of our best guys aren't able to go, we just need a little bit of a change of pace. They need a rest in qualifying. They both have a big role to play. And I think they're two players that are just getting started in their careers over in Europe. Tim Weah, obviously coming off he had all those injury problems in years past. And this season was the first time where he was able, to get a decent running into the game. He won the title with Lille. I think he's going to have a much bigger role to play with Lille this upcoming season. And that's going to be exciting. We keep talking about this good problem to have. It is awesome to see all these good young players that still are playing well right now and just have so much room to grow and to where they can be. And you just think about all the different, come World Cup time, come qualifying time, if these players continue to improve, all the different options we have. Tim Weah, with his pace, offers something different to Gio Reyna on that right flank. So another player that's going to have a big time role to play. Also, shout out to DK. We didn't see him in the Nations League roster. He was part of the squad that played over against Switzerland. He comes in for this Costa Rica game, finally gets that goal that we've all been talking about. We saw the physicality. He probably could have had a couple more goals. There were a few times where he didn't take the shot or wasn't as aggressive as you would have thought he would have been off of a couple Tim Weah crosses. But good on him to get the donkey off of the back. And he's a player I don't expect to be with Orlando much longer. We saw what he did at Barnsley. He's coming back to Orlando. And in the next month or two, I don't expect him to be with Orlando. I think he's going to be back with England. I don't think it's going to be in the championship. I think there's going to be a Premier League team that sees something in Daryl DK. And I think he's definitely a player that's going to be on the rise as well.
God, and just thinking about that, like I could just so see him fitting in perfectly to like a mid-table Prem team. I think that would just suit him so well. He was the player that I was going to shout out next from that Costa Rica game because I think he had a great game. Could have had a couple goals like you mentioned, notably the one that he just kind of backed off of, which was strange. I think it was off of the Aronson cross inside. But
yeah, correct. I mean, that was the one where Aronson ran through three players and set him up. And I think he thought Anthony Robinson was coming back on the overlap, but
I think he was letting it run through. But for a striker, you want that. You want somebody to take authority and just have the shot in. But nothing bad. He's still a young guy, but I think the one thing that he proved was he made his presence known on the field, and that's great to see from an American striker, because that's something that we don't necessarily get unless we have Josie Altidore on the field. And Josh Sargent, he's on the field, but he makes himself he contributes through smaller ways. He's not going to be that physical presence. He's going to get the ball ticking, linking up with other guys, and just being quick on the ball. And Daryl DK, he can do a lot of that as well, but just that physical presence was really cool to see. Just that character in the final third was immense. And I'd like you mentioned, just seeing him in England, man, would be, in the top flight of England, I think that would fit him perfectly, and that would just be the coolest thing. Because I know he would kick off well. If he's having proper English fullbacks whipping in crosses to him as their target man, I think it would just work out great. And he has still early on in the career, but I think that's going to be something that'll be something worth looking forward to.
Another guy we haven't mentioned, Jordan Sivachu, Payfock, or Payfock, is that how you say it?
Payfock, yeah.
Payfock, yeah. Scored in that Honduras game. He came off the bench in the Mexico match, if I'm not mistaken, right? Yeah, he did. He came off, didn't have too much of an impact on that. I think I liked a lot of what I saw with him over the last couple of games. He came off the bench against Costa Rica, got hurt, so hopefully he's okay. Hopefully that knee injury isn't too serious and it's just a little bit of a knock. But he's another guy that offers a completely different option, and it's good to have a lot of different players, not only that can get the job done, but can also do it in different ways. Because right now, there hasn't been that guy that has taken that number 9 and ran with it. Obviously, we had Josie Altidore for years, but the reality is he's been hurt. And I think if he's able to get healthy, he's going to have a role to play come World Cup qualifying and come World Cup time. Hopefully we qualify for that. We always talk about how, we're going to qualify. But the reality is we didn't last year. And I'm going off on a tangent, which we got to keep it homed in, the ADHD bouncing off the walls a little bit. But, it's great to see all these different options that can help us beat different types of teams, because all these different players offer a lot of different assets and what they can do for this team.
Yeah, just to tie in things a little bit, with what we're talking about, back to the Costa Rica game and moving forward, with the summer still having some competitive matches left, with the Gold Cup and then qualifying later in fall, who do you think, not who do you think realistically, but who would you think would give us the best shot at getting the job done in each one of these scenarios? Since we've seen a good performances from each, Sargent, DK, and Sibachu now, I think they all have a say in these upcoming matches. But who do you think would get the job done best?
In terms of the Gold Cup? Because we always been hearing that that's going to be a little bit of a different roster, just being that a lot of our European guys are going to be over with their European clubs, trying to get ready for that next season. So they probably won't get called up. I do not remember if there's still that other rule where like you can bring players in later. I'm not entirely sure about that. I can't exactly remember what the rules are now with it, because you used to be able to bring in a different squad for the knockout stages. And if we're still able to do that, I could 100% see, guys like Josh Sargent coming in later. But it's going to be a very different roster than, at least early in that tournament, than what we saw. So I wouldn't be shocked if guys like Daryl DK, if he hasn't quite got to move over to Europe, we could see Josie Altidore, if he's fit, being reintroduced into the team. Guys like Chris Mueller, who we saw earlier in the year with Orlando City, him coming back into this team. With that being said, at the moment, if everyone is fit, I think my mind still leans toward Josh Sargent. I think he's the one that gets the best out of the other players around. If Josie Altidore is fit, my mind leans towards Josie Altidore as well, just because he's able to hold the ball with that experience. The reality is he's the only proven goal scorer up top that we've had that has done it on a consistent basis. So yes, all these guys offer different things, and we saw PFOC come in and do what he's done, and Daryl DK's had a lot of good when he's played. But if everyone's fit and we're playing Mexico, or we're playing in a game that we have to win to, qualify for the World Cup, to win the Gold Cup, I think that my mind shifts towards Josh Sargent and Josie Altidore ahead of those guys at the moment.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. Until we see more from, the other two, DK and Siuchu, I think, Josh Sargent takes the more, that is the comfortable decision, seeing how he can get the most out of the guys around him. But, moving forward, I think, there's a lot still to look forward to this summer. Not for a while, until, I think mid-July is when Gold Cup starts up.
Yeah, July 11th.
July 11th, yes. But until then, we're going to have some content watching the guys. We've had a lot of content now, and we'll have tons of content then too. Hopefully get the live shows back up and running. But man, what a win. Not to forget what we're here to talk about today. What a win against Mexico to wrap things up.
Dude, it couldn't have been a better way to start the summer. We're starting it with a bang. These players showing themselves, Ethan Horvath, guys like Reggie Cannon, we haven't even mentioned, who played great in the Costa Rica game. I think a lot of players did pretty well for themselves in terms of their club, putting their names on the map for some bigger clubs and some other clubs to swoop in and see what they got, because this team is headed in the right direction, and it's clear to see this was only the beginning. I can't wait to see what happens in Gold Cup. I can't wait for World Cup qualifying, and I can't wait for to hopefully see what these guys can do in the World Cup against some other teams over in Europe and in South America.
Yeah, and let's hope that this summer, we're not only talking about the games, the rosters, but we could very well potentially be talking about some big transfers as well. So we'll get that all to you guys. We'll get all that hype around the Gold Cup going, and then eventually World Cup qualifying. But started off the summer with a bang. 3-2 USMNT versus Mexico, winners of the Nations League, baby. First ever
Nations
winner.
League champs, baby. See ya.
See you.